No one played Lucio quite like LeeJaeGon. His highlights would vary from jaw-dropping 3k boops to LeeJaeGon falling off the map on his own accord. One week he'd carry his team, getting multi-kills and looking like the best player in the lobby. And the next, he'd Ajax 3 back-to-back ults. LeeJaeGon was an incredible Lucio player during the Overwatch League, and he's one of the reasons I became a Lucio main myself. Today, I'm going to talk about the entire career of LeeJaeGon, going over his many highlights and lowlights. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see weekly Overwatch content, do me a favor and subscribe. We just hit 3,600 subscribers, and I'd love to get to 4,000 subs before the end of 2025. With all that said, let's begin. We are starting off back in late 2018, where LeeJaeGon would begin to emerge as a potential superstar when he joined a Korean contenders team named Runaway. This team featured several future Overwatch League players like Hisu, Mag, Assassin, Yaki, and Gangnam Jin. In 2018 Korean Contenders Season 3, LeeJaeGon would earn his first title, taking down Element Mystic. LeeJaeGon quickly established himself as a very aggressive Lucio player, and in 2019, he took it to an even higher level. Runaway would adopt the GOATS comp throughout 2019 Contenders, and LeeJaeGon's Lucio and Brigitte would help Runaway to a top 4 placement in pretty much every major tournament throughout the whole season. They even got a big win in 2019 Contenders Season 2, getting their revenge on Element Mystic, who had won Season 1. As a result for his excellent play, LeeJaeGon was a top rookie prospect, and on November 25th in 2019, LeeJaeGon would be signed by the Shanghai Dragons. The 2020 Shanghai Dragons were an absolute powerhouse. Alongside LeeJaeGon, the team had future MVP Fleta, alongside fellow DPS players Diem, Dia, and a rookie Lip. The Dragons also had Void and Fearless on tank, and Izayaki as LeeJaeGon's support duo. This team was absolutely stacked, and from day one, they were a serious threat in the Asia region. Heading into the first major tournament, the May Melee, the Dragons were an astonishing 11-2, getting the number 2 seed in the tournament. After some pretty close matches against the London Spitfire and New York Excelsior, the Dragons would make it all the way to the May Melee finals, where they would face off against the Prophet-led Seoul Dynasty, who had just performed an astonishing finals run as the number 7 seed. They were on a crazy hot streak, having upset the number 1 seed Guangzhou Charge just a few hours earlier. The Dynasty came out hot, and the Dragons struggled, big time. They would go down 0-3, and that's when they decided to make a change at tank and DPS. They would sub in Fearless instead of Stand 1, and they would put in Lip for the rest of the series. These subs ended up breathing some new life into the Dragons, and they completed the greatest reverse sweep in Overwatch history. They won 4 straight maps to clutch out the first stage win of LeeJaeGon's career in a 4-3 victory. This is one of the single greatest matches in Overwatch League history. Watching the Dragons go down 0-3 just to manage to come out on top will never be topped. LeeJaeGon throughout the series also played a great Brigitte, and the duo of Izayaki and LeeJaeGon put the league on notice early. Shanghai continued to be one of the best teams in the league, and just a month later, in the Summer Showdown, the Dragons would make it back to another stage finals, this time against the Guangzhou Charge. However, they were just no match for the Charge, with Krong playing Sigma, Eileen playing Genji, and Shu playing Ana, just being too good for them. They ended up getting the best of the Dragons team, and they would place second place. I guess this loss fueled the Dragons because they would strike back with a vengeance in the Countdown Cup. They went undefeated in July, and they would sweep their way to their 3rd straight stage finals, this time facing off against the Hangzhou Spark. This match was closer than the score would lead you to believe, but it was still a Shanghai Dragons domination. The Dragons would sweep the Spark 4-0 and would win their 2nd stage of the season, and now they wanted to take it all. The Dragons ended up finishing the regular season with an astounding 27-2 record, which to this day is the highest win percentage of any regular season team in Overwatch League history. For his excellent play throughout the year, LeeJaeGon would win his first Role Star, which was incredible for a rookie player to achieve, and it would end up setting the tone for LeeJaeGon's career. Heading into the playoffs, the infamous 2020 playoff patch would happen, leading to the rise of Roadhog and Zarya, and it caught many good teams off guard. This was all made worse when every single team was allowed into the playoffs. But luckily for the Shanghai Dragons, they managed to beat the resurgent Seoul Dynasty and secured their place in the top 4. In said top 4, they would end up beating the Philadelphia Fusion. However, they would lose back-to-back map 5s to both the San Francisco Shock and a revenge game from the Seoul Dynasty. eliminating them early in 3rd place. In the match against the Shock, LeeJaeGon would get a little lost in the sauce, playing really aggressive and costing Shanghai a couple of fights. This was a shocking upset, with such a great season ended short of the grand finals. But they'd be back for revenge next season. In the offseason, they would lose Fearless to the Dallas Fuel, and in his place, they would sign Fate from the Florida Mayhem. Heading into 2021, they would begin their quest for revenge. The 2021 Dragons started out hot immediately, establishing themselves as one of the teams to beat in Asia. In the May Melee, the Dragons beat the Philadelphia Fusion 3-2 and would advance to the top 4, where they would narrowly beat the Florida Mayhem 3-2, advancing up to the winners finals to face the Dallas Fuel. Dallas looked unstoppable, with Fearless getting revenge against his former team, beating them not once but twice in the same bracket, and eliminating the Shanghai Dragons in 2nd place. Despite the excellent placement and the silver medal, Shanghai were angry, and they wanted their revenge, and in the June Joust, they would look unstoppable. After yet another 3-1 stage, they entered the knockouts as the favorites, and in their match against the Seoul Dynasty, LeeJaeGon would make history. In Map 1, on Lijiang Tower, LeeJaeGon would get 10 environmental kills in one map, setting the Overwatch League record, which to my knowledge still stands to this day. Not only did the Dragons sweep the Dynasty because of this, but Lijiang Tower was given the nickname LeeJaeGon Tower to this event. 10 boot kills in one match is something you can only really do in something like Quick Play, let alone in a professional Overwatch League match, but LeeJaeGon was just built different. After this, the Dragons seemed to be riding that high, and LeeJaeGon played some phenomenal Lucio throughout the June Joust. They would actually get swept 3-0 by the Dallas Fuel in round 1, but that would only fuel their lower bracket run. They would sweep both the New York Excelsior and Atlanta Reign in order to make it to the June Joust finals in another rematch against the Dallas Fuel. At this point, Dallas was 3-0 against them so far this season, but the Dragons had kind of begun to figure them out. With their new Wrecking Ball Reaper composition, in one of the greatest games in Overwatch League history, and after being down 1-3 at one point in the series, the Dragons would win 4-3 in a wild comeback from behind victory, taking home the June Joust tournament, their first one of the season. Winning this tournament was already enough for a great season, but somehow, this is only the beginning. The Dragons would go undefeated in the Summer Showdown, winning 4 straight and only dropping one map the entire stage. After sweeping the New York Excelsior in the knockouts, they would enter the Summer Showdown tournament as the number 1 seed. They'd beat my Atlanta Reign and the Chengdu Hunters to reach their 3rd straight stage finals. Technically, this is actually their 6th straight tournament finals if you include all the 2020 ones. They would end up having a rematch against the Chengdu Hunters in the finals, but they were no match. Shanghai would win 4-1 in a pretty easy game, taking home their 2nd straight stage title. At this point in the season, Shanghai were 10-2, and they had enough points from all their stage wins to already be the number 1 seed. So Shanghai decided that they were going to take the Countdown Cup off. They rested their starters and just didn't try that hard. It's crazy that they were so far ahead that they literally didn't even need to try anymore. Like, that's unheard of. No team is that dominant. Even though they did this, they still managed to go 2-2 in the stage, and they finished the year with a 12-4 record, entering the playoffs as the number 1 seed. In the 2021 Overwatch League playoffs, the Dragons would set records. First, when they were given the choice on any team to go against in round 1, they picked the defending 2-time champion San Francisco Shock, and wiped the floor with them, 3-0. They would move on to face the LA Gladiators, the defending Countdown Cup champions, and they would come out on top in a pretty good 3-1 victory. In the winners finals, they would go up against their season rivals, the Dallas Fuel, spearheaded by their former tank player Fearless. This was a pretty close series, but the 2021 Dragons felt like a team of destiny, and they would not be denied. They won 3-1 and it would advance to the grand finals. 1 game away from completing the run, and only one team stood in their way. However, it wasn't the Dallas Fuel like they expected. Instead, the Atlanta Reign clawed their way out of the lower bracket. The Reign had just completed one of the most miraculous lower bracket runs of all time, but they were no match for the dominant Shanghai Dragons. They crushed them 4-0, becoming the 2021 Overwatch League champions and only losing 2 maps throughout the entire playoffs, which is tied for the least maps given up in a single postseason. For his excellent play, LeeJaeGon would receive his 2nd Role Star, which was very deserved. LeeJaeGon was constantly the best main support in the league in 2021, and he's established himself as one of the greatest Lucio players of all time in this season. 2021 Shanghai Dragons will be going down in history as one of the greatest and most dominant teams of all time, and for LeeJaeGon to be a part of that will solidify his place in the Overwatch League Hall of Fame. However, he wasn't done yet, and in 2022, they looked to run it back. Heading into 2022, the Dragons made very little changes to the team, with none of their starting 6 leaving. The thing that really changed the most for the Shanghai was the move to Overwatch 2, and the introduction of the solo tank. As the defending champions, the Dragons entered the 2022 season as title favorites, and they started out really strong. They would lose their opening game to the Philadelphia Fusion, but they'd win 5 straight games to enter the kickoff clash as the number 2 seed in Asia. In the bracket, they would narrowly defeat the Seoul Dynasty, but they'd fall to the Philadelphia Fusion, and in the ultimate profit revenge game, the Dynasty would beat them in the lower bracket finals, eliminating the Dragons in 3rd place. Aside from Lip, the Dragons struggled adjusting to 5v5, and the issues persisted into the midseason madness, where the Atlanta Reign would get the revenge for the 2021 Grand Finals and would knock out the Dragons in 5th and 6th place. However, things would change in the Summer Showdown, when the Jotes meta would be introduced. You guys remember this one? It was very strange. Drunker Queen, Genji, Sojourn, Lucio, Brigitte. One of the weirdest comps in history, but the Dragons were really good at it. All of a sudden, Who Are You and Lip were the best DPS duo in the league, and LeeJaeGon was able to play his signature Lucio. Izayaki had a surprisingly good brig, and this team would go an undefeated 6-0 in this stage, only dropping 1 map. In the bracket, it looked straight up easy. They swept the Charge and the Dynasty, and in the Grand Finals, despite it being a lot closer than their other games, the Dragons would still beat the Seoul Dynasty 4-2 and would take home the Summer Showdown in a dominant fashion. This team looked like they were back in 2021 form, and the Jotes meta was just perfect for them. They would finish off the season with a clean 18-6 record, which was good enough for the number 2 seed in Asia and the number 5 seed in the playoffs. Unfortunately, they would get beaten by both the Hangzhou Spark and San Francisco Shock, eliminating them pretty early. With that unfortunate ending to their season, LeeJaeGon's legendary time as a Shanghai Dragon would come to an end, and he would move on to the Boston Uprising for the 2023 season. The 2023 Boston Uprising were nothing like the old Uprising teams. Alongside LeeJaeGon, his longtime teammate Izayaki would end up joining him, keeping this iconic duo together. On top of that, the Uprising added many legends like Smurf, Birdring, Decay, and Twilight, and the Uprising looked like a potential playoff contender in 2023. They started out pretty good, going 3-0, but some major issues arose. The Uprising manager, Pri, hired a coach named Jidset, who was very questionable. He notoriously stole money from players and was involved with embezzlement, and this really hurt the team. The Uprising would be upset in a shocking 0-3 fashion by the Vancouver Titans, and it was clear something needed to change. Luckily, they fired Jidset, and although they kept Pri around, they were still able to rebound and win some more games. They would finish the stage 6-2, their only other loss going to the undefeated Atlanta Reign. The support trio of Izayaki, LeeJaeGon, and Twilight was really good, and even when Izayaki was out due to injury, Twilight was able to sub in and they didn't miss a beat. This team would end up as the North America number 4 seed, and they had to battle through the knockouts to make the tournament, but they played really well, barely beating the Washington Justice and LA Gladiators to qualify for the tournament. In the actual midseason madness, they would lose a rough first game to the Houston Outlaws, before managing to snag a nice win over the Hangzhou Spark in the lower bracket. Unfortunately, they just couldn't handle the Florida Mayhem, and they finished the tournament in 4th place. Still, this was a nice placement, and the Uprising were looking to continue their great performance into the second half of the season. They would go 5-3 in the summer stage, only losing games to the Atlanta Reign and Florida Mayhem, finishing with a pretty good 11-5 record, yet again giving them the number 4 seed in North America. Unfortunately, this yet again meant that they had to get through the play-ins, but they avoided any issues by taking care of the London Spitfire and Toronto Defiant, advancing off to the playoffs. In their groups, the Uprising would lose to the Hangzhou Spark, but they were yet again able to bet the London Spitfire not once, but twice in the same week, beating them for the 3rd time in what was like a 2-week span. LeeJaeGon in particular played a nasty brig, and was a major reason the Uprising succeeded in the playoffs. The Uprising would make it all the way to the top 4, where they unfortunately lost to the eventual champions, the Florida Mayhem, and they would finish in 4th place. Still, even though they may not have had a ton of playoff success, this was an amazing season, and LeeJaeGon was still able to show that he was elite, even on a new team. After this, the Overwatch League officially ended, and LeeJaeGon would actually play a little bit in OWCS. It wouldn't be for very long, but he would play for Runaway and then later Fnatic, playing in OWCS Korea alongside his longtime support duo, Izayaki. They wouldn't find a ton of success in the very stacked Korea region, but this was a fun final ride for LeeJaeGon. Unfortunately, on September 30th, 2024, LeeJaeGon would announce his retirement from professional Overwatch, and all Lucio players celebrated the career of one of the all-time greats. Despite being this hyper-aggressive, silly, all-over-the-place player, LeeJaeGon was truly elite, dominating the game for many years as one of the world's best main supports. I will also remember LeeJaeGon for all of the great memories, incredible plays, terrible Ajaxes, and everything in between. LeeJaeGon will go down as one of my favorite players of all time, and one of the greatest Lucios ever. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. We just hit 3,600 subscribers, and I'd love to hit that 4K mark by the end of 2025. I really like making these videos, so let me know who you want a video on next. Next week, I'll be releasing the top 10 tanks video, so stay tuned for that. I've been really appreciating the recent support lately, and I've got some really good ideas planned, so stay tuned. That's all for me, though. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, love you guys.